Have you ever stopped to think about what really holds our world together? I'm not talking about physics, but about the systems, the rules, the invisible blueprints that shape everything from global politics to how an AI might actually think. Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers on those exact blueprints. So here's our plan. Think of it like a giant zoom in. We're going to start way out, with the massive, messy systems you see on the news every day. And then, we're going to drill down, layer by layer, all the way to the tiny, fundamental instructions that make it all run.
Okay, let's start at the 30,000-foot view, the world stage. Right now, the huge systems of global power and finance, well, they're creaking under some pretty serious pressure.
Geopolitically, you can see the old blueprint is kind of being torn up. Traditional alliances are getting a little shaky, becoming more about short-term deals. And at the same time, you've got this new bloc forming, sometimes called the Quartet of Chaos, with China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And their whole goal is to actively challenge the way things have been run for decades.
And what about the money? Well, the global economic engine is running kind of cool. Projections are showing some pretty sluggish growth, only about 2.5%, while big players like the US are still trying to wrestle inflation down to that stable 2% mark. It's a really delicate balancing act on a massive scale.
And this is a perfect example of how that stress shows up. This one number, a potential 60% tariff, it's not just a tax, it's a blueprint for a potential shockwave that could rattle the entire global supply chain. It just goes to show you how connected and how stressed the whole system is.
So, if the world stage is that chaotic, how do you create any kind of order? Well, you build it. Let's zoom in now from global chaos to the rigid world of bureaucracy, where reality isn't built with armies or walls, but with stacks and stacks of paperwork. This quote right here, it absolutely nails the core idea. In the world of finance and law, real security isn't about a steel vault. It's about building a fortress of records that is so perfect, so complete, that it becomes an unchallengeable fact. The paper trail itself is the treasure.
So how do you actually build this paper fortress? This protocol is the blueprint, and it's all about one key idea: redundancy. See how it requires two independent authorizations at every critical point? That design is there to basically eliminate human error and make any kind of fraud next to impossible without serious collusion.
And this table reveals the strategy behind it all. The entire system is engineered to produce the highest possible tier of proof. We're talking about documents that are notarized and apostilled, legally about as solid as it gets. This isn't just keeping records, it's literally constructing reality.
Okay, so we've seen how these principles work for governments and big institutions, but now, what if you could take those same ideas and use them to build something even more focused, a completely private, self-contained economic world?
At its core, a private treasury is like its own little financial universe. It's not a bank that lends you other people's money. No, it's a system that lets its members access the value of assets they already own, all inside a totally closed loop.
And that's the absolute game changer in the blueprint. A traditional bank loan creates new debt. It literally expands the money supply. But a treasury credit extension, that just changes the form of existing already verified value. One system makes more debt, the other just circulates the equity that's already there. We've seen blueprints for money, for law, for entire economies. But what happens when the system itself needs to think, adapt, and learn? Well, that brings us to our deepest zoom yet, from the blueprints of society to the blueprint for a thinking mind. So how do you get an AI to truly learn, not just calculate? You have to get beyond the simple yes or no of computers. Think about it. We humans are rarely ever 100% certain. We live in the land of maybe. That's what ternary logic gives an AI, a maybe state. It lets the AI hold two conflicting ideas at the same time, to feel that dissonance. And that moment of uncertainty, that's the trigger for real learning. Okay, so the AI can handle ambiguity. What's next? It needs a memory, a persistent self. You know how most AIs feel like they're meeting you for the first time, every single time? That's called session amnesia. This Ether framework is designed to fix that. It creates a thread of identity, a mental continuity, so the AI can actually learn from its past experiences, just like we do.
So let's put it all together. This is the AI's core thought process, the blueprint for how it thinks. First, it starts with an intent. It focuses its attention on a specific reality or problem. Then comes the dissonance, using that maybe state to process conflict and reorganize its own understanding. And finally, it commits energy, turning that new insight into a decision or an action. It's a constant cycle,
Focus, adapt, and act.
And that brings us all the way down to the final zoom, the most fundamental layer of all, the bedrock where every single one of these grand systems is ultimately born.
Because here's the ultimate truth. Whether you're talking about a global alliance, a legal fortress of paperwork, or the emerging mind of an AI, they are all systems. And at their absolute core, every one of these systems is built on a foundation of simple, precise, executable instructions, code. This is the final blueprint, the bedrock of our constructed reality.
So, we've journeyed from the sheer chaos of nations all the way down to the clean logic of a single line of code. It really shows you our world is governed by blueprints, one stacked on top of the other, which leaves us with one last, pretty big question to think about. If our reality is built on these systems, who's drawing the plans?